What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the debut album by rapper Travis Scott. Basically this project is called Rodeo and it came out in the late summer of 2015. So the thing about this particular project is just the fact that Travis Scott had a series of hit mixtapes in like the early mid 2010s as far as those pitches going to happen. One was 2013's Alfaro, which I reviewed back in 2023. It was pretty trendy to like the sense of carving out and helping to flesh out like 2010s trap and like the Instagram era and Snapchat era as far as those pitches going to happen. The Snapchat era as far as those pitches going to happen. And then after that was Days Before Rodeo, which was a pretty excellent type pitch. One of the last batches of like mixtape type formats. I mean, mixtapes were around in like the mid 2010s as well, but this one that kind of felt like a more notable type one in an aspect where things were starting to flesh out when 2010s trap was starting to flesh out into full blown albums like with Future and with Yo Gotti and Meek Mill and folks like that, and other folks like Drake were kind of having some of this style of Young Thug, some of those type folks. So it's just a good amalgamation. This is kind of in the early stages. This is, like I was saying, like Travis Scott's debut album, so it's just kind of the pitch of seeing what he would do with the particular album once he gets on that train track as far as those pitches going to happen with it. And this is a very artsy type project. I feel like similar to Kanye West, how every one of his albums past like Yeezus from 2013 was kind of a work of art just within the pitch of saying like Yeezus, Life of Pablo, Ye, some of those type of ones, even ones like Jesus is King and some of those later type ones just had like, it was just every single Kanye West project was like a notable type affair, and that's kind of what happens with Travis Scott. He just hit the ground running as far as those pitches going to happen. There's a lot of heraldment about this, but this is a very visceral type project just to be able to say that. Just look within the tone. It's a very sonically visceral type project to be able to get that just within the aspect of saying it's trippy within the aspect, but it's just kind of the aspect that there's like some beat switches and things like that, just differential type tangents that kind of go along that not a ton of projects were really doing. Like Drake would occasionally do like some of the beat switches, but Travis Scott's pretty much like a good pro at being able to do some of that type fare, especially being able to have it fit the song format where it doesn't feel awkward or just ruin the song flow as far as those pitches can happen. It's just an interesting aspect to kind of get some of these type ones, just having some of that type flair, because there are some lengthy songs on here. I look within the pitch, I was almost thinking originally when I was reviewing this that possibly the product behind it, some of these songs are just a little bit more lengthy than they need to be. It's not like within the typical radio single type format. Like the lead single 3500 is over 7 minutes as far as those pitches can happen, which is not common that radio singles really have that marketability. It's just kind of within the tone. Like there's a song, like I forget the song there's a song that Travis Scott did off of Astro World that had Drake on there. I forget, I think it's called, Travis Scott's Sicko Mode, that particularly would switch the style up and just be able to pull it off within the pitch. And these are some early type formats. So yeah, every album with Travis Scott, he's definitely one of the faces of new school as far as those pitches going to happen. This kind of solidified that. This is kind of a more rough draft type bear. I do feel like Travis Scott fleshed out even further in terms of marketing the singles, considering this only had 2 singles around the time. But it was just an interesting aspect because this is one of the ones that was carrying the torch for 2010's trap. So it did within that aspect. It may not be as emphatic in the visceral type, this viciousness of like Future's Dirty Sprite 2, which also came out around this time. And Drake may have had a little bit more fleshed out, but considering that Travis Scott was, early 20s around this particular time, first album, some of that type fare is definitely a pretty excellent type fare and concept to be able to have this just be this kind of knockout, just be able to nail it. More so him being like a ringleader of like the more new school type era, more so than Future, who was kind of more just a product of like stuff from 2012 and 2011 and 2014, some of those type tones. But Travis Scott feels like one that was going to last for a lot longer, and he continues to. It's just an aspect. He's had some albums like his 2023 album, I forget what, Utopia, some of those type ones. So it's just within the aspect that he still has, prime years within the aspect as far as that kind of goes along with it. But it's like some good type fare. It's an initial type one, kind of some good buzz building as far as those pitches kind of happen with it. Just really trippy type project, just like the tone as far as being able to get towards it. Pretty much like T.I.'s I'm Serious or like Kanye West College Dropout. I feel like it's debatable. I wouldn't say this is as much full-blown like a new era classic, but it's definitely very notable. Like when you think of T.I.'s Urban Legend or I'm Serious, some of those type ones. Now, I would probably say that Urban Legend is like a classic, but in terms of like some of the earlier type ones, they're just very good, but not as defining as later ones. Like some folks would probably feel like Astro World is like a classic, or like the Jack Boys project from 2019 might have been like a relative, just good look and overall damn near close to a classic. And then there's this 2016 album like Birds Singing the Trap, something like that. I forget what that one's called, but that's another nice one that had some quality. But yeah, Travis Scott just had a pretty good up ramp of like quality between like the mid-late 2010s and pitches like that. So it's just kind of within the tone. It's some good type fare. So yeah, basically off this album, I wound up recommending the regular edition more so than the deluxe. I would have to say I just look within the tone behind it, but I would definitely have to say out of like 14 songs in the standard edition, I wound up recommending 11 and a half. So there's really only 2 songs I don't recommend in any fashion on the standard edition. But then out of 16 songs, I didn't recommend 11 and a half out of 16, so it's just within the pitch, but we'll get towards it. So basically the 2 singles would be 3500 and Antidote. So 3500 is kind of like an on the scene kind of sprawling dark summery trap frolic to kind of get here, just a band up kind of vehicle rollout, I would feel like, within that tone. Vintage kind of 2010s bop to kind of get within that aspect. And this is definitely one, this feels like a very vanilla Travis Scott song nowadays, just within the aspect. I feel it's definitely very rough around the edges, just kind of the aspect of what he was initially kind of kicking off with, just the concept of him being on album type fare and the sort of stuff he would do with that freedom to kind of have that particular pitch as far as getting towards it. Compared to stuff like, I don't remember the singles from Al Faro and Days Before Rodeo. I need to throw those projects on my new MP3 player as far as those pitches going to happen, but it definitely, just within the aspect of being able to say that this is definitely something that was trendy to like the time as far as those pitches can happen. Kicking off like Future kind of goes greatly in tandem with Future and some of those type folks during the Dirty Sprite 2 days and the What a Time to Be Alive days. 2015 was a pretty big year for 2010's trap, definitely within the pitch. Travis Scott, like I was saying, was definitely one of the torchbearers that kind of ushered along that particular style, and this is some good concepts of just that initial kickoff, because it was kind of in like its relatively early stages in like the album type format. I mean, definitely in the mixtape side of things, it was very popping within that pitch, but in terms of getting into like the commercial, where it's more in stores, and these are certain, the Snapchat, Instagram, kind of Twitter, daily living type fare, some of those type pitches, TikTok in certain senses, this within that fare becomes everyday type fare. It's still kind of relatively green as far as those pitch can happen, but it happened. I mean, definitely some of these songs were like the initial kind of kickoff to that, just like Al Farrell helped kick off like 2010's trap in terms of like the mixtape type fare and the initial kind of disjudgment of it in general as far as those pitches can happen. Just some of the initial type ones just within that particular movement as a whole. I would definitely say songs like 3500 and Antidote particularly had that fare for like stretching out into albums and just being more marketable to retail, I'd say. So it's a good pitch for that. So Antidote was the second single. It's another nice one. Now, this is like a very slogged and feeling hella nice kind of trap swirl to kind of get here. Just some distorted evening, I would have to say about this one. Just good residential shebangs. It's definitely some good residential shebangs that I'd say about this song. Pretty hot song kind of get. And just really appreciate like the overall distortion of this particular song. Just has some excellent type fare. Just a real menacing, just overall gnarled head trip to kind of get within that tone. There's some ones on here that have that particular aspect. Like I would say that Nightcrawler is a pretty good concept for that. Maria I'm Drunk's a pretty excellent concept for some of those type ones. I'd probably say 90210 and like a Ladies Trap kind of sense is a good one for that. And Piss on Your Graves like some gnarled type ones as well as far as those pictures. This is definitely some trippy typeness to be able to get here, so you will have some excellent type fare. A great album to have as like a smoker's toolkit for folks just within that aspect of 2010s type fare, just within that. So it's just good concepts to have that enhancement on top of things. Just have like those kind of just swirled out kind of times and like some groggy kind of autumn and summer evenings. I'd say good fare for that. So that's the concept about it. So yeah, basically to say, the only 2 songs that I don't recommend on like the standard edition would just be Pornography and then Flying High, I'd have to say. And then the almost song in that particular fashion was Apple Pie. And then both the songs in the deluxe edition I didn't recommend. So just to talk about some of these. Basically, I like the fact that T.I. kind of kicked off the intro here. It was kind of a differential type tone. Felt like something within like the Kid Cudi kind of more spectral kind of tone behind it. Just something a little bit otherworldly within the pitch. It was kind of a strange concept as far as those pitch can happen. I like the concept of what was going along with it, but this the amalgamation as to how that particular song, it was trying to be like some sort of trippy kind of loomer as far as those pitches can happen, but it just didn't pull off nearly as the vibe as well as like songs like Piss on Your Grave or Nightcrawler or Pray for Love. Some of those type ones just in particular just nailed that vibe a little bit better. Probably should, I don't know, it just wasn't as compositioned, and I feel like Flying High was just kind of like a festive kind of party type song, and like a house party sense, just some of that noise. Basically just a song to drown out to and just kind of have for white noise fare as far as those pitches can happen, but just the execution, like how the production fare kind of went on that song was just not as glistening, I'd have to say, within the tone behind it. Just kind of felt, it's not so much full-blown grading, but just within the sense that it just didn't have as much like synchronization with it as far as the concept as what went along with that one. So that's kind of within the pitch. But then the 2 deluxe songs, like Okay Alright was just a way more lengthy song. Now it's a little bit more feasible on like the single 3500. I realize that that's a longer song than Okay Alright, but just the composition of how Okay Alright kind of went, which kind of I It's too bad that song wasn't slagged by like 40 or 50 seconds, something like that, because I did like the concept of Schoolboy Q being on the song. There's just a lot of compositions on there that just didn't amalgamate well. And then Never Catch Me was just kind of like an ominous kind of ambient type one, but just didn't pull off the vibe within the pitch behind it. So I didn't see much necessity to really pick up the deluxe edition as far as those fares going to happen. I mean, the standard edition is pretty damn close to being like a relative classic just within the tone. Definitely something. I mean, it's just like I was saying, it's just kind of like I was saying, it's just kind of like T.I.'s I'm Serious from 2001, which is kind of like seen as like an arguable great debut within the pitch behind it, but obviously T.I. got far better later, and it's kind of the same thing with Travis Scott as far as this pitch going to happen, but he definitely had some impactful mixtapes, and this is like a pretty sizable debut that just has some excellent type fare and flair about it that just really works for like the trip of what it does. Very sonically pleasing just in the aspect, very visceral, nails some of these types of things. But so yeah, we'll get to some of these. So basically, Apple Pie is the almost song. It's like a halfway blue collar kind of trap pep to kind of get here, just a composed and kind of tidy flavor about this particular one. Kind of reminds me of almost something gospel-like, but not quite as churchy, I'd have to say, within that tone. Just a little bit more kempt about it, I'd have to say, in particular. And it's like some groggy commute for like some outings, I'd have to say. It's kind of SFW trap within the pitch. It's just kind of something, if you do have school to report to, or you do have work to report to, and you do have to be a little bit more composed just within the composition. Not quite, I mean, you can smoke within the relative freedom of it, but it's just kind of the concept of realizing that you do have some tasks or work to get done within the standard fare of how to get that composition kind of going. So it's just within the aspect of just having stuff to report to, but just within the aspect of having some extra type fare, of having a few swishers or backwoods just within the in-between as far as those pitches can happen. Just kind of groggy and kind of slag type commerce just within SFW sense. So I do like the concept of getting like some trap SFW because it's some pretty good fare for that just within the trippiness. But it's an almost song just because I question the composition, how often I'd listen to it just within the pitch. If you don't, it just feels a little bit more blue collar within the standard sense behind it. So it's just a little bit more organized within the tone, but it's just kind of the concept if you're not feeling organized within that pitch, just within the aspect of having something where you have to show restraint or something like that. It's just within the tone that it's just easier to listen to the songs where you get full blown tore up a lot more, I'd have to say, just within the fare behind it. But so yeah, a lot of these just have excellent type of appeal, and real nice one on here is Pray for Love with The Weeknd. It's like a stretching and dark cast spell of a song to kind of get within that tone, very similar to like The Weeknd's The Hills that was dominating around that time in the summer 2015. It's a trippy kind of club hopper, I would definitely say, and it's just some vivid outs to kind of get within that tone. So it's a real snaking type one, just works pretty well. There's like a series of these on here. I'd also say Nightcrawler's a pretty good pairing with that, and I'd probably say Antidote's a pretty good pairing with some of those types of songs as well. And then probably also like Piss on Your Grave is an excellent example. Piss on Your Grave is a quality one. Just speaking to that song, is like a gnarled kind of trap fury here, I'd say. One of the album's most vicious jump offs off this particular product, pretty much in particular. And it's like some Friday night heat to kind of get, and this song slaps pretty hard as far as those pitches can happen. So this is like it's definitely one of the most vicious ones. Just would have to say, Kanye really tears apart this song for the short amount that he's on the song, and Travis Scott bolsters this song pretty well as well, I'd have to say. It's kind of the concept of just like that standard kind of frenetic type trap. I mean, there were definitely folks doing this around this time, Meek Mill, Yo Gotti, Future, some of those type of folks, but this is just one where this is a little bit more kind of desecrating things just in the tone and just kind of just kind of doing a dance on like the concept of like the haters and just piss folks like that, I'd have to say, in particular, as far as that kind of goes. Maria, I'm Drunk is a nice one as well. I'd have to say this surprisingly has Justin Bieber on there, and then Young Thug, which is pretty good type flair to kind of get this one. Some nice jazz kind of get this. It's like a house party slag of a song to kind of have here, just one where you kind of went over the top in terms of feeling right pitch like that, just real drunken type one, just the aspect of just really having some good times being slizzard, definitely enjoying like some AM kind of ambience, I'd say about this one. So it's just some good type fare, just after hours type kickback, just in the tone behind it, just finish up the red cuts, figuring out what's going to happen, head out some of that type fare, just Bella's chit chat as far as those pitches kind of having just some good type tones. That particular song goes along pretty well with Impossible, I'd have to say. It's like definitely like a drunken kind of after moments, I'd have to say here, just a thrilling kind of usual fare just within that tone. There's some woozy kind of wind down definitely, and some good extra gab to kind of sneak in as far as those, some good extra gab to kind of get in as far as those pitch kind of happen. And this is a great song to finish up to as far as those pitch kind of happen. Figure out what's going to happen, situate, chat with the Bella to take home as far as those pitch kind of happen. Just figure out as to how those aspects would kind of happen just within the fare, just getting done with the night and just overall retiring. Nightcrawler is a quality one just within the aspect. It's like a good companion to Pray for Love, like I was saying. saying some of those type of ones, Piss on Your Grave and Antidote, some of those type pitches. Pulsing Nightclub Bout to kind of have within that tone, just Pulsing Nightclub Bout to kind of have within that tone, just excellent type fare for that. This is just out in the after hours, I'd say, just great loud pack song to kind of have for some after hours loud pack, definitely within that pitch, and it's just an overall ill song. Do like the composition of this song. Now, surprisingly, Chief Keef is on the song. He's difficult to distinguish from Travis Scott. They have pretty much similar cadence, I'd say, and Sway Lee's on the song as well, which is pretty good. It's kind of him doing a hook before he kind of blew up with like the song he did with French Montana, The Unforgettable, as far as those pitches kind of happen. But yeah, but I definitely want to emphasize the concept of this being like a pulsing nightclub bout on the song Nightcrawler. It's definitely a very head trip type one to kind of get. Probably one of the best ones to have for like a good just turn up where you're just getting it's a real stunt type song to really get blitz as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just have some good type fair and just overall some throwing kind of crunkness just within those aspects I had to say. Oh My, this side is a nice one as well. It's like a darkly kind of simmering rumination kind of get here. Just a great head trip. I would definitely feel like this distorted kind of ponder like Dirty Sprite 2's Gloom as far as those pitches kind of having some of that feature type fare. But it kind of sobers up towards the end of the song. This is excellent type fare for this, but I definitely feel like the first few minutes of Oh My, this side with Quavo is like some good type fare to just smoke an L or something like that. Just a good type pitch of just rumination. Just have some extra thoughts as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just evening slide, but then later on it just kind of feels like maybe you go inside or just a concept of like some homies show up or just some standard type fare where it's like, okay, gotta. Then later on in the song it kind of sobers up. You finish up the blunt, some pitches like that, just kind of ash it out as far as those pitches kind of happen, just kind of figure out what's going to happen, and then just get back to not so much where it blows your high as far as ruining the rest of the night as far as like the good feelings that you were having before, but just kind of within the concept of just like, hey, just gotta kind of be composed a little bit. Kind of a little bit similar in the end of the song to like Apple Pie within a certain sense, but just not quite as, I mean, these are not square type songs, but it's just kind of within the aspect as far as saying that it's just the standard composition of just having stuff to do, just not full blown, just like, I mean, it's not quite as much boundless kind of head trip within the pitch. It has the aspect of just having some extra fare behind it. It's just some good type tones. It's be able to have some of those extra type moments for like some relative composition on top of that. So it's a good type, I mean, there's not too many songs I can think of that can go from being like a pulsating kind of head trip to switching it up to kind of having like the tone of just something that kind of resembles like almost SFW within the pitch, or just something a little bit more commutable. I'd say it's just within the aspect. Future has not done this. I want to say Drake hasn't either. It's just within the pitch as far as getting some of that, but it's kind of within the tone. I'm trying to think of some other songs I haven't talked about. Oh yeah, 90210 is a nice one as well as like an oozing kind of R&B flavored trap melodic. 90210 is like some oozing kind of R&B flavored trap. I would definitely say here just a melodic and hypnotic kind of trip out to kind of get within that particular pitch. Just a bell is Gem. Definitely, I feel like this some lit evening fair. Definitely having a great song to get turned to, but it kind of switches it up later on. Kind of becomes a little bit more of like a chivalrous almost aspect towards the rest of the song. Kind of becomes more like Kanye West or Big Sean like, just a little bit more graceful and just a little bit more composed in the sense. It's kind of a concept, maybe smoking under the concept of smoking a swisher or something like that with the bell at first, and tidying up and adjusting as far as those pitches kind of happen, and just getting to something more graceful, a little bit more just with an aspect of just a little bit more kind of a little bit more enriching just within the sense behind it. So it's just a vivid type flavor, kind of in between like Big Sean and like his finally famous type days, and just the pitch behind something of like more kind of just like trap oriented, I had to say. Something a little bit more graceful and romantic as far as those pitches can happen. Just some good type fare. So I want to say I talked about every song on here as far as those pitches can happen. I want to say I talked about every song on here, but I found another one. This song is Wasted, so this is a nice one here. It's like a woozy kind of voodoo like smoke sesh, kind of get within that tone. Just great dungeon banter, I would feel like, just for homies type fare, hangout, kickback. There's some PlayStations on, movies, kind of chat, map out some stuff as far as those pitches kind of happen with it. Just standard type fare. Figure out this Bell is just kind of on their phone, pitches like that, just staring in between type moments, just checking Instagram, some of that typeness, just be able to get within that tone. This really works for like an extra type, just commerce type one, not just like house party type socialness, but just without the concept of really having like the blitz type craze about it. But this is another stock one right here that feels like a pretty vicious head trip to kind of get. So it's definitely like some great smoke sesh kind of powwow type music to really go in and with the smoking as far as those pitches can happen. So it's some great smoke session powwow type music to really go in with the smoking as far as those fares can happen with it. So it's this great type fair, dungeon type music and banter as far as those pitches can happen. Excellent typeness. That's just kind of the concept. So yeah, once again, I look after this album, I think I basically covered these songs as those pitches kind of happen with it. Maybe I didn't talk about I Can Tell either. I actually want to say I haven't talked about this one. So I Can Tell is like a glaring kind of neighborhood trap turn up to kind of get here. Just a grand kickstart for like a house party. I would definitely feel like some house party heat. This kind of makeshift relief. I would definitely feel like here it's just overall nice one just within the pitch. So this is a concept. I Can Tell reminds me something that Young Thug would kind of do in some of his more just around the neighborhood type, just post up, kind of tell you what time it is type trap songs just within the pitch as far as those pitches kind of happen with it. Lil Durk was pretty good at those. Meek Mill would kind of do those. Lil Wayne even on like the semi occasion just as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just an initial dap and just kind of the send off of like just the what for and the 411 as far as those pitches kind of happen along with it. Just some good type for to kickstart like a house party, some of that type goodness kind of get there. So just good type bops to have for some of that. Definitely like the pitch behind it. So, yeah, just the concept behind this particular album definitely has some of that craze. The aspect behind delivering Travis Scott on an album, the initial kind of set off of him melding with that sound works pretty well. There's definitely some moments in terms of like the fury as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's actually surprising there's not a super ton of vehicle knock on here as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's not as much like a stunner flex type project. I feel like apart from songs like Nightcrawler and possibly like maybe Piss on Your Grave, for the most part, this kind of has it's pretty like this is a pretty trippy type product. I definitely like the appeal behind it. It just has the blitz type appeal as far as getting towards that. You're gonna find these songs that will really get your smoke trips kind of going. Just the send offs of just drunken after moments, some hella smoke trip type moments, just some good type composition, homies type fare. It's the banter and the extra type fare, just having like a pretty routine kind of aspect, just like standard festive kind of summers and just autumns as far as this pitch can happen, just with like the emotion about it. So not as much errands and trek type music. It's not as real much like kind of getting stuff done. It's kind of more in one set place, one or the other as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just house party type fare or just nightclubs within certain sense. Not as much nightclub bound as full blown, I'd have to say. A little bit more residential within the pitch, but I look after the ton does have some excellent typeness just to be able to get within that pitch. It's just kind of the concept. A lot of just kind of saunters, a lot of excellent kind of 2010s trap flavored red cup type music kind of get within that tone. So yeah, I would say the score I'm going to give this album is a 9.25 out of 10. I feel like minus like this talking 11.5 out of 14, which the Almost song Apple Pie is really relatively good. It's just within the aspect of me questioning how often I'd listen to it. So basically damn near 12 out of 14 would just be like a 9.25 just in the pitch. Pretty excellent type fair to get that. The social score, I would probably say the social score would get like a 9.5 out of 10. Just a little bit higher than the social score just because the delivery of all these songs, the execution, how they work, is the aspect. It wouldn't get a 10 just because there really wasn't like a humongous hit on here. Travis Scott got a lot larger later as far as those pitches going to happen. I just look within the tone. I look within the relative aspect. That's just kind of the concept of it. I don't want to say this is rough around the edges, but he did manage to get some larger hits and get more fleshed out as far as like the aspects of delivering upon more radio jingles and just the aspect of just being able to have like some of these more commercial type bites. It's just a concept. He had the her element in the mixtapes, which definitely delivered. He fleshed out some of those types of sounds, very trendy and revolutionary just in the pitch. And this album was pretty relatively trendy and revolutionary as well. It's just kind of the concept that in terms of like the number ones, like it's not that he didn't hit the ground running, it's just the fact that these songs were just not as wholesomely like mainstream in terms of like the full-blown appeal. It was definitely mainstream enough to be noteworthy, but just in the concept of like the everyday number ones like you would get out of like Michael Jackson or The Weeknd back in 2015, or the Michael Jackson in the 80s, The Weeknd in 2015, Tupac in the 90s, some of that type era wasn't quite at that particular point, but 9.5 is still pretty excellent. So in terms of the future, like Travis Scott is working on stuff as far as those pitches going to happen. He dropped Utopia in 2023. He dropped like the 10th anniversary of Days Before Rodeo just back in the summer of 2024, so it's an excellent type fair, has some new stuff on there. Excellent type pitches. We're going to have to get to some more of these type ones. Just what I'd say. I'm going to see what's up with further kind of 2010s Travis Scott as far as those pitches can happen. But this is a pretty damn revolutionary type project here. Did a lot for what it did within the composition behind it. Definitely worth checking out easily. Just to be able to say this virtual damn near classic within most aspects.